I've had many requests for people to ask me to detail how I made, this is the push bar that I made for pushing my saw when I'm milling, so I don't have to crouch down to push it. So I've had many requests of people asking for details and dimensions on what I made. So I'm going to show you, and I'm also going to show you how I made the throttle connection for this. So this is the whole setup of my chainsaw with remote push bar and throttle, auto throttle. Now I'm just going to give you a quick look at how it goes together, then I'm going to detail all the pieces. So you can see the throttle is on the trigger there, the brake handle here. If the bike is what I'll squeeze to operate the throttle. And if I just go over there now and give this a try, I'll squeeze the handle and you'll see how the throttle just goes up and down just by squeezing it. It works very simple, it's not complicated. And to remove the throttle, whole assembly, cable can just pop out like so. It's out, and the handle just has these two screws holding it on. Okay, so now I'll detail. The only other thing that's worth pointing out before I go too far is that I drill holes in my bar, and that's to bolt it to the guide, because the pinch screws and bolts that come with it, they don't work, and it moves and damages your chains. So now I'll show you all the details. The throttle connection to be able to remotely throttle the chainsaw is actually very simple. There's two components. There's one, this clamps onto the saw, and I've got another video you can watch to see it in use, and I show it being put on the saw. All this is a piece of 1.5 inch outside diameter aluminum channel, and this channel, I've taken it, cut a piece. It is 3 3/4 inch long, and I riveted on a hinge. This is just a very basic hinge, and riveted it onto the aluminum with obviously the hinge pointing down. I cut the hinge to a length that worked for me. I then bent it just using pliers and a vise to get the shape that would grab the trigger on the saw to close it. As you can see, I cut a slot in the end, and I curved over the end of the hinge itself. Curved it over so you can see there's something to hold the cable in place. So the only other piece to this, and if you haven't got a welder, I'm sure you could rivet these pieces together, is a block of solid aluminum. I'm sure you could use a block of wood or anything else if you have a way to attach it. I used the aluminum because I had it. I used a piece of 3/4 inch solid aluminum, and it is 2 inches long. And what I did was I drilled a hole in the aluminum, 1/2 inch from one end, and you can see that hole has a slot connecting it. And the slot is, if you're familiar with cables on bikes, etc., allows me to put the cable in and it'll hold. The hole itself does not go all the way through. It goes about 3/4 of the way. So when you look at the bottom, you can see the hole didn't go all the way through, but the slot does. So now when I want to put the cable in there, I can just take the cable, slide the cable through, and then push the sheath for the cable in. Now what I have is the cable coming out the bottom, very similar to how you would on any bicycle, etc. And I have this piece. I don't know where I found this, but it's just a little piece of round metal tubing, and I tapped it. It's almost like a piece of brake line, and I tapped it using a tap so I could screw to 832 screws, one in each side. Drilled a hole in the end of it so I could slide the cable through. So I slide the cable through and then tighten a screw on each side, and now I have a way to attach something to the cable. So basically that goes through, just drops in the little slot as so, and now when the cable is pulled tight, that's my lock. So it comes out very simply. And you'll see now if I squeeze the brake handle over here, that's how the throttle works. That's actually squeezing the throttle on the chainsaw. So there's nothing complicated about this, just a couple very simple little things to put the cable in. Sheath slides down but doesn't come all the way through. So with this, I cut the bottom of the channel right off. So you can see the shape of the channel. And this slides right over the handle when you grab the saw. And once it's slid over the handle, all I do is snug these, and you can see these just go in and they'll pinch the handle, one front, one back. Again, just tap the holes and put in a couple of bolts. Just finger tight. I don't tighten these, I just snug them, and it basically holds this whole assembly in place. And underneath the trigger is this, which is being pulled up and down by the remote handle. So the remote handle is a very cheap Amazon order. It was 2 brake handles and brake cables from Amazon. I believe when I bought it, it was about $16 or $17. And you get 2 cables, one for the front brake, one for the back on a bicycle, sheath and cable. And one end has nothing on it exactly for clamping in. However, one is too small, so when I ordered it, I'm really only using 1 cable. In any case, I have spare handles. So if we look closer at what I did here, so I have the whole assembly, and you can see the handle is just clamped to a piece of broom handle, which goes right through my channel and has a screw in it to hold it in place. I put a handle the other way, which I push with when I'm operating it. I can push on both, but this is really solid. And it's just a handle off some old piece of exercise equipment. I drilled a hole through it and put it through, and has a pin so I can hold it. So again, I have another video showing this, but this is just a timber tough milling bracket, I guess you'd call. And I put these pieces of wood on it, and I actually made a board with a track so this holds into it. There's advantages to that, but there's some disadvantages too. So whether you use just the unit as is or have a track, it's up to you. What I do recommend is this. The Timber Tough came with some set screws, and the blade went between a slot. I got rid of that because my blade ended up moving and touching the steel and destroying my sharpness and teeth multiple times. It would never stay put. So I basically ground that off. Made sure I had to play with this a lot with the saw in place to make sure the saw was perfectly true to the cutter, so that there were no angles as it rotated and it stayed perfectly straight. Otherwise it won't cut properly. So all I did for this gadget, the Timber Tough, was cut a couple of aluminum spacers and take the bolt out, put it back through with my pipe on it, and away it goes. So not complicated. The one thing that's very important is this piece of chain. So this piece of chain here, I basically wrap through the handle of the saw, and then use the carabine clip here to clip it, and that limits the travel of the saw. So it lets me set the angle. Do I want the saw going at an angle like this, or do I want to shorten the chain and have the saw going completely vertical when I'm cutting and pushing? That's what this chain is for. And so you put the saw on, you clamp it in, and before you start, you just set the angle you want the saw, and away you go. So very simple. Anybody, again, wanting more dimensions, I put this little angle in it, probably about a 30-degree angle, and it just makes it nice for pushing. The lengths that I use, overall, I'm 40 inches. 40-inch long is the bar from start to finish. And I have about a 13-inch length, and then with the angle, and then another 28 or so. Now, I made it adjustable, which I found was kind of neat at first. I never change it now, but I can extend or shorten the length of this bar, depending what I'm doing with it. Anyway, I hope that helps some people. It's not difficult. It just takes a little bit of playing when you're making this, but it's really quite simple. And I'm sure there's a lot of ways you could do this without having a welder, an aluminum welder. You could make it out of a piece of steel channel. It'd be a lot easier for welding if you don't have the ability to weld aluminum. And again, the rest of these pieces, very simple to make. Anyway, hope that answers some questions that people have had, and good luck with it. It's a great little gadget.